Imagine discovering that the corporations you've trusted your entire life, the retailers that filled your childhood memories, the establishments you've patronized for generations, the merchandise currently occupying space in your home, are teetering on the edge of financial ruin far more precariously than the public realizes. This scenario seems impossible to believe, yet throughout 2025, the impossible has materialized into stark reality. A fundamental economic transformation is quietly sweeping through communities nationwide. Shopping centers that overflowed with vehicles during weekend mornings now display vast expanses of vacant pavement. Established drugstores have suddenly shuttered without advance notice. Home furnishing retailers that embodied the suburban American dream are submitting emergency bankruptcy petitions. Underlying these shutdowns exists a trend so pervasive that financial experts have labeled it the year's most significant commercial narrative, U.S. Bankruptcies 2025. The strain manifests everywhere you look. Business operation expenses have reached unprecedented peaks. Purchasing patterns among America's senior population have contracted dramatically toward basic necessities. Financial obligations that previously seemed controllable have transformed into urgent threats. As digital commerce continues siphoning profits from brick-and-mortar establishments, numerous vulnerable enterprises are confronting a harsh reality. Heritage value, emotional attachment, and customer devotion no longer guarantee commercial survival. What's disintegrating extends beyond mere commerce. It's the fabric of American everyday existence, the establishments we depended upon, the corporations we believed in, the destinations that provided a sense of consistency in our lives. Throughout this analysis, we'll examine 10 recognizable names currently experiencing the most severe challenges. By the conclusion, your perspective on your local business district may permanently change. The debut of the Roomba into American households back in 2002 seemed almost magical. An autonomous device silently handling domestic tasks while family members continued their daily activities. Yet, as 2025 unfolds, the corporation responsible for this breakthrough confronts financial circumstances considerably harsher than public awareness suggests. Recent corporate disclosures revealed iRobot experienced a devastating 39% annual revenue contraction, plummeting to approximately $884 million, representing the organization's poorest financial showing in roughly a decade. Financial hemorrhaging intensified beyond $280 million, while the balance sheet's most alarming indicator emerged under $25 million in liquid capital reserves. For a global hardware producer, such figures triggered widespread industry concern. The collapsed $1.4 billion Amazon purchase agreement delivered a crushing setback. This transaction would have eliminated substantial long-term obligations and secured fresh capital infusion. Instead, iRobot remains forced to battle competitors like Roborock and Eovax, whose equivalent products retail for 30 to 50% less, a pricing differential iRobot cannot bridge. Component expenses and logistics charges remain stubbornly elevated while consumer patterns have evolved. Battery replacements frequently surpass $70, numerous maintenance services exceed $150, and increasing numbers of households select budget-friendly alternatives instead of investing in premium Roomba iterations. Given declining revenues, escalating expenses, and absent acquisition prospects, industry observers caution that iRobot's upcoming 12 months will involve tough choices, ranging from comprehensive reorganization to possible asset liquidation. Fatburger, Johnny Rockets, and Twin Peaks appear as distinct dining concepts, yet a single-parent corporation controls them all, one currently shouldering among the restaurant industry's most crushing debt burdens. Throughout numerous years, Fat Brands pursued aggressive expansion via acquisitions, a tactical approach that absorbed recognizable American dining establishments while simultaneously accumulating obligations faster than income growth could support. As 2025 arrived, the financial metrics became undeniable. Fat Brands revealed outstanding obligations approaching $1.3 billion, an exceptionally substantial figure relative to organizational scale. Interest payments alone exceeded $100 million yearly, consuming capital previously allocated toward location operations and franchise development. At certain junctures, the corporation disclosed possessing merely several million dollars in available cash, provoking serious questions regarding capacity to satisfy immediate financial commitments. Escalating expenses compounded difficulties. Raw material costs for beef, poultry, and cooking oil increased 15 to 25% across the preceding 2 years. Insurance coverage, particularly for late operating and alcohol-serving venues, surged dramatically. Employment scarcity drove compensation increases of 10 to 14% throughout multiple metropolitan areas. For franchise operators functioning on razor-thin profit margins, the financial equation collapsed. Various locations have already ceased operations. Others implemented reduced operating schedules or workforce reductions to maintain viability. Patrons across numerous states have observed deteriorating service quality, diminished staffing levels, and dining spaces considerably emptier than recent memory. Credit evaluation firms currently classify FAT brands as severely troubled, noting that absent substantial debt restructuring or strategic asset divestiture, the corporation may face difficulties preserving portions of its restaurant holdings. For countless Americans, Forever 21 represented the mall's pulsing epicenter. Loud, luminous, merchandise overflowing, crowded with young shoppers pursuing the latest weekend wardrobe. Yet the throngs that previously packed those signature yellow shopping bag aisles have diminished markedly, while the company's financial condition has deteriorated even more rapidly. Throughout 2025, F21 OpCo, the entity operating Forever 21 locations across the United States, filed Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection for the second occasion within 6 years, attributing the action to persistent customer traffic decline and mounting operational expenditures. Legal documents disclosed intentions to permanently shutter over 350 locations absent securing a purchaser. Revenue that previously surpassed $4 billion annually peaked long ago. By 2023, income had declined beneath $2 billion, with profit margins growing progressively unstable as transportation, employment, and mall leasing expenses climbed. Competitive forces have proven merciless. Ultra-fast fashion digital platforms like Shein and Temu now price comparable merchandise 40 to 70% below Forever 21. Meanwhile, TikTok-driven micro-fashion movements evolve too rapidly for conventional retail distribution systems to track. Simultaneously, nationwide mall patronage has fallen over 20% compared with pre-pandemic benchmarks, eliminating the foot traffic the brand required for decades. Within numerous surviving locations, the indicators are unmistakable. Skeleton staffing, expansive clearance zones, and complete floors shuttered to reduce utility expenditures. Former personnel describe dwindling shipment volumes and bare minimum inventory levels designed purely to maintain location operations until creditors and property owners render final determinations. Forever 21's struggle transcends fashion. It captures a retail framework becoming obsolete in an era where the mall itself no longer functions as the cultural cornerstone it once represented. For extended periods, At Home appeared virtually limitless, a decorative warehouse where 20 aisles containing lamps, carpets, mirrors, and wall decorations extended further than most residential living spaces ever could. This represented the variety of establishment suburban households visited seeking inspiration beyond simple bargains. Yet beneath those enormous showrooms exists a business framework that fractured under inflation's weight, mounting debt, and contracting discretionary consumer expenditure. During mid-2025, At Home submitted Chapter 11 paperwork, exposing approximately $2 billion in aggregate obligations, substantial portions originating from a leveraged acquisition finalized immediately preceding the pandemic and subsequent inflationary surge. The organization immediately commenced closing 26 locations with additional shutdowns under consideration as lending institutions demanded cash conservation. Comparable location revenue has declined across multiple successive quarters, while merchandise turnover has decelerated to its weakest velocity since the early 2000s. Managing a retail space equivalent to a football field's dimensions has grown increasingly problematic. Utility expenditures for illumination and temperature regulation have increased 15 to 20% since 2021. Transportation charges, despite modest easing, persist 30% above pre-pandemic standards. Concurrently, average transaction values have contracted as Americans curtail non-essential home decoration acquisitions. Survey research indicates nearly half of consumers now categorize at home's primary merchandise as postponable, a hazardous classification within high-expense retail environments. Inside remaining establishments, you observe the pressure. Seasonal displays contract, workforce diminishes, and previously congested aisles feel unusually deserted. For numerous longtime patrons, the enchantment of affordable transformation simply doesn't extend as far as it previously did. With obligations accumulating and consumer appetite weakening, at-home's continuation depends on whether it can modify its oversized structure to a marketplace increasingly preferring compact, economical, more adaptable retail configurations. For millions of households throughout the Midwest and East Coast, Value City and American Signature Furniture transcended mere retail. They marked life transitions: the initial apartment couch, the dining table where children completed schoolwork, the reclining chair that accompanied someone through retirement years. These labels established their standing on accessibility and dependability rather than showmanship. Yet by 2025, even that dependability has reached a critical juncture. The corporation controlling both brands documented a catastrophic revenue collapse, descending from roughly $1.1 billion in 2023 to about $830 million within 2 years, a decline approaching 27%. Financial losses surpassed $70 million, and by late 2025, the company initiated Chapter 11 proceedings, documenting over $350 million in outstanding obligations. Throughout restructuring, at minimum 30 to 50 locations across various states have commenced liquidation or face scheduled closure. Operational difficulties intensified swiftly. Furniture transportation expenses have risen 20 to 25% since the pandemic. Foam and timber materials remain costly, and warehousing charges have climbed as commercial property rents achieve record levels in several regions. With the U.S. residential real estate market cooling, home transactions declining throughout much of 2024 and early 2025, appetite for major furniture purchases has weakened substantially. Inside persisting locations, extended aisles previously showcasing complete room arrangements now appear conspicuously sparse. Clearance markers predominate. Consumers browse without purchasing, frequently comparing online competitors providing similar furnishings with expedited delivery and reduced overhead expenses. For communities that relied upon these retailers as their accessible furniture source, each shutdown creates a significant void not readily replaced by higher-priced national chains. Throughout decades, Big Lots occupied a niche few competitors comprehended: the intersection between discount shopping and everyday functionality. This represented where households could enter with $50 and depart with groceries, cleaning products, a decorative pillow, and perhaps a modest furniture piece. The emotional consequences in smaller communities have been immediate. Following a Big Lots closure, entire retail complexes struggled attracting replacement tenants, diminishing foot traffic, and leaving vacant storefronts dark for months. For millions of Americans who relied on Big Lots to extend limited incomes, the chain's withdrawal signals beyond a retail challenge. It reflects a widening affordability crisis, reshaping daily existence. For more than 7 decades, Tupperware occupied the center of American domestic life: the pastel containers in refrigerators, the stacked vessels brought to church gatherings, the neighborhood gatherings where attendees socialized, enjoyed refreshments, and discovered which covers matched which containers. For numerous older Americans, Tupperware transcended mere plastic. It represented ritual. Yet by 2025, the corporation behind those memories battles through among its history's steepest financial crises. During late 2024, Tupperware submitted Chapter 11 documents, disclosing over $812 million in outstanding obligations and acknowledging substantial uncertainty regarding its capacity to continue operations absent major reorganization. Revenue has steadily declined for years, dropping below $1.2 billion, nearly half the company's generation from a decade prior. Global transactions decreased 30% across recent reporting intervals, reflecting the direct sales framework's collapse, once synonymous with the brand. Competition has transformed the landscape. Retailers like Walmart and Target now provide inexpensive containers at 20 to 40% reduced prices, while premium-oriented consumers have migrated toward glass and silicone options. Meanwhile, the quantity of active Tupperware representatives in the U.S., once numbered in tens of thousands, has plummeted dramatically as online retail supersedes traditional party-based distribution. Even devoted customers have detected changes: thinner plastic, irregular quality, and fewer locally conducted demonstrations. Tupperware's continuing restructuring will establish whether the brand can restore its position or whether an iconic component of American kitchen culture becomes another retail history chapter. For generations, Rite Aid represented the neighborhood destination requiring no explanation, the venue where prescriptions were renewed, family photographs were developed, and late-night necessities could be acquired without extended travel. Yet by 2025, among America's most identifiable pharmacy chains, wrestles with financial pressure that has driven it far beyond standard cost reduction. In its latest reorganization, Rite Aid filed Chapter 11 for the second occasion within fewer than 2 years, revealing obligations extending into billions of dollars. The corporation has already shuttered hundreds of locations, and documentation suggests additional sites remain under assessment as part of an aggressive stabilization strategy. Diminishing front store revenue, declining prescription volumes in particular regions, and legal obligations connected to opioid-related allegations have intensified significant pressure. Certain court records reference potential liability exceeding $3 billion associated with litigation expenses. Operational obstacles have multiplied the situation. Pharmacy workforce shortages prompted wage expenditures to increase 10 to 12%, and theft in urban markets elevated loss rates substantially above historical norms. Multiple states reported location closures, leaving communities with drastically diminished access to walk-in healthcare, especially in rural territories where Rite Aid functioned as the sole proximate pharmacy. Inside remaining establishments, the pressure is observable: reduced pharmacists per shift, extended waiting periods, and shelving protected behind plexiglass responding to loss prevention. Patrons accustomed to quick convenience stops now encounter restricted hours and curtailed services. Rite Aid's reorganization is anticipated to reshape substantial portions of its national presence. For many neighborhoods, each closure represents not merely a store's disappearance, but a local healthcare anchor's elimination. For millions of older Americans, QVC and HSN transcended shopping channels. They represented comforting voices, hosts who felt like companions, product demonstrations that seemed personal. Yet behind that comfort exists a corporation now confronting among its 4-decade history's most formidable financial struggles. Kurat Retail Group, the parent entity of QVC and HSN, has spent recent years battling declining audience numbers and rising expenditures. By 2025, the company's obligations had expanded to nearly $7 billion, while revenue slipped beneath $12 billion, down significantly from its earlier decade peak. Credit rating agencies positioned Kurat deep into distressed classification, with multiple downgrades referencing elevated bankruptcy probability over the subsequent 12 to 24 months. Viewership constitutes the fundamental problem. Traditional cable audiences, previously QVC and HSN's strongest demographic, have declined over 25% since 2020 as millions of households abandoned cable subscriptions. Operating expenditures have simultaneously risen, shipping expenses up 30% compared with pre-pandemic standards, warehouse employment up 10 to 14%, and returns, perpetually an expensive component of television retail, consuming an even larger revenue portion. In various earnings disclosures, management acknowledged material uncertainty regarding the company's long-range prospects. Thousands of workers were terminated in restructuring actions, and QVC quietly reduced live programming hours across multiple markets to curtail expenses. For devoted viewers, the transformation is evident. Fewer live broadcasts, fewer recognizable hosts, and a mounting perception that the corporation is contracting its once expansive presence merely to remain operational. Curate's forthcoming decisions will likely establish whether these two historic networks can reinvent themselves or progressively disappear into a digital environment they helped establish. For generations of Americans, Joann transcended a craft retailer. It represented community space, where parents acquired fabric for Halloween costumes, where retirees mastered quilting and backroom instruction, where church congregations stocked supplies for charitable initiatives. You didn't merely shop at Joann. You created something there. Yet by 2025, that familiar green and white storefront has become among the decade's most substantial retail closures. During early 2025, Joann filed Chapter 11 for the second occasion within just 12 months, revealing obligations in the hundreds of millions and a restructuring strategy that ultimately couldn't preserve the business. By spring, the corporation announced it would permanently close every one of its roughly 800 stores nationwide, among modern U.S. history's largest specialty retail shutdowns. Comparable location revenue had been declining for years, and the pandemic craft surge, which temporarily elevated revenue above $2.3 billion, dissipated rapidly thereafter. Substantial obligations from a previous leveraged acquisition left Joann with interest commitments that escalated as rates increased. Transportation expenses spiked over 20%. Cotton and synthetic material costs climbed, and customer traffic never completely recovered. The migration toward online crafting, with discount vendors selling thread, yarn, and implements at 30 to 40% reduced prices, further undermined Joann's profitability. The human consequences have been substantial. Complete sewing communities are losing their congregation spaces. Thousands of long-serving employees, many with 15, 20, even 30 years at the corporation, now face location closures. For smaller communities, losing a Joann means losing among the final remaining specialty retailers that supported local schools, hobbyists, and small enterprises. Joann's disappearance marks a watershed moment, a reminder that even profoundly established, extensively cherished American brands aren't guaranteed continuation when expense pressures intensify and consumer patterns transform. Across these 10 corporations, a pattern becomes inescapable to overlook. Escalating operational expenses, utilities up double digits, insurance premiums at unprecedented levels, employment costs climbing year after year have driven long-standing retailers into circumstances they were never constructed to withstand. Simultaneously, consumer patterns have shifted dramatically. Older Americans are shopping less frequently, acquiring fewer non-essentials, and depending more heavily on online options. In this environment, U.S. Bankruptcy's 2025 isn't an isolated phenomenon. It reflects a comprehensive transformation in how the nation spends, works, and maintains its daily routines. For communities losing these establishments, the impact is tangible. Extended drives for medication, fewer accessible decoration alternatives, and the quiet disappearance of businesses that once seemed permanent. Numerous of these endangered companies may eventually reorganize and return. Others may not. What matters presently is comprehending how rapidly the landscape is evolving and how proximate the next closure might be to your own neighborhood. If this analysis helped you perceive the broader picture, remain with us. There is far more unfolding across America's economy than most people comprehend.